Welcome, everybody, to another episode of DNS Unfiltered. Today, I'm joined by cybersecurity guru Chip Harris. Chip, say hello to the folks out there.
Howdy ho, everybody.
So this may test the limits of our unfiltered name of this show. So Chip is going to try to keep a lid on the the profanity, but something might slide. We might have to throw a few beeps in. But Chip, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background, because you have a very extensive career in cybersecurity. I want the audience to understand your expertise.
Yeah, I've been doing this 28 years, going on 29 in August, so basically my entire adult life, since I got out of college. How I got into IT and OT is, very interesting because, I started off my IT career as a bench technician at CompUSA fixing computers, which most people in this generation don't understand that you had to go to a computer store to buy a computer, they, and same thing with parts, there was no Newegg. There was no, some of these things didn't exist. You had to physically go to a location, to buy a gateway computer, to buy a Sony computer, which was being made at the time, or an HP, or a Compact, or an Apple, even, So that's how I got started back in the 90s, because I was working my way through college, and that was my part time job that turned into a full time job. And I got my military contracting license, because I wanted to, eventually work in the military field. And I was, about to go into the military, and then 9/11 happened, and then after 9/11, it was like, oh, you've got your license and certifications, and you've got all these Microsoft and CompTIA certifications, and, you have questionable morals. Okay, can you come work for us?
You're like, we need you. You're with us.
And they were hiring, and they said, how much do you want an hour? And I said, well, I make $13 an hour. And the lady was like, no, 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 no. You will start at $250 an hour and then go up from there. And, I was looking at this from a monetary standpoint because, I owed, $75,000, plus in college, because I had to
Yeah.
pay for my college. I grew up poor. I grew up dirt ass poor. College was on me. I had taken out credit and loans and, everything I could, and I was in debt. Like high level credit card and school tuition debt. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this for, 6 months to a year to see if I can get enough money to pay my way out of, all my college debt and tuition that I owed. And I got my, first paycheck after my first tour. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing this for a while. This is doable. This is
So
nice.
student debt and 9/11 catapulted you into, I believe you phrase it as in the rear with the gear in your
Oh yeah.
military adjacent career.
So I was, and I was. I worked, with, the National Security Agency. I worked with, tailored operations. I worked with CENTCOM. I worked with all of the intelligence apparatuses to be able to feed people into the field, what they needed, and I was in the rear, with the gear and armed to the teeth. To the teeth. And I was, working with the 501st Air Cab out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I worked with the Night Stalkers unit. I worked with a lot of different special forces teams, and, when you're 21 years old, that's great. But then when you start wailing towards your 40s, you're like, I am sick of getting shot at. This is not on my top 10 list of things to do anymore. I want to go do something else. And, I came back to the States and they said, well, you got to finish up, your contract, because I had been hurt over there. I had been shot twice, stabbed 3 times, hit with an IED. And I was like, I have had some metal put through me and in me, and I am ready to, kind of come back to the life that I want to live, with the money that I had saved up, and so forth. And they're like, yeah, you got to finish out your contract. It's with the DEA. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I got nothing against that. They go, well, you're going to Mexico to investigate the drug cartels for 2 years. And I'm
A
like,
little side hustle against the drug cartels. Nice.
yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, okay. Wow. And then I got down there. I was like, going, dude, I felt safer in Kabul than being in Mexico.
I
And
imagine.
I was kind of like, okay, did that for 2 years, and then I came back and I said, okay, what are the two things that need the most, cybersecurity help, period, in this industry? And the first one from an IT standpoint was dealing with banking, and the other one was dealing with healthcare, from an IT side. And I said, I can really help on the IT side on that. On the OT side, I said, what can we really deal with on that? And it's, gas, water, light, and electrical, and the other one is nuclear. So those are how I kind of spread myself into looking for, a career, a physical 9 to 5 day job, working in cybersecurity. And there's not a lot of OT cybersecurity in these companies, I found out. So, it was very interesting. I ended up working for Dell, as in their government division, to help them out with healthcare, which was one, and then OT side of healthcare, which is
Right.
a very interesting little animal that's very micro segmented, because hospitals use gas, water, light, electrical, water filtration, just like everything else, but it's in a bigger location and building than your house. And then a lot of that now is integrated with what they call BMS, building management systems, and those BMS systems are very unique, vendor driven, vendor owned and operated sometimes, depending on the facility, and very hackable. So all the stuff that I had learned over there in war, I started applying to, with Dell and working with some of the companies I was working with, to start doing counterintelligence, counter surveillance, espionage, ransomware. What would hacker gangs be doing? And then of course, terrorism. Either internal or external terrorism from the United States, because I mean we do have bad actors in the United States that for that involved in domestic terrorism, that want to do harm, to people, and
Yeah.
hurt electrical grids and so forth.
So let's talk about that OT versus IT, and that was a term that I actually hadn't heard. And when I looked into it, it's basically like the physical infrastructure obviously
That is
needs
correct.
security too, and that's your specialty,
Yep. So it
or
is,
now is.
I deal with transportation a lot. So I deal with trains, planes, and automobiles. And I also deal with, power, water treatment, electrical facilities, nuclear power plants. We got 53 of them here in the United States, and building more as they come along. So it's totally different than working in a data center, or working in a server room, or working at a desk in a cubicle waiting for the sweet release of death. I didn't want that. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. Don't want to do it again. So I said I could do this remote, from home, because as long as I have an internet connection, I can be wherever you want. And immediately, right before the pandemic, I started working for the NIH and the CDC, and they were like, "Hey, we got a mess, like a real mess, and you never are supposed to have your IT and your OT touch, like integrate. You want IT over here, and you want OT way over there in a whole nother galaxy, not even in the same ballpark, not even in the same league,
But aren't they kind of blending now? Like everything wants to be on the internet.
Why, I don't know, but
But it's happening.
okay, it is an initiative. Don't get me wrong. But there are some things that are not supposed to be, OT wise, put on the internet. For example, a water treatment facility. Internally, yes, for an intranet inside the system, yeah, absolutely. But most of those, are sensor driven, fly by wire, and guess what? You don't want those things to be remotely managed by somebody somewhere else in a whole nother state that's not there to where they can physically, oops, that's wrong, and then turn the knob right or left. You see my point?
Hmm.
So, yes, it does have its advantages to have some of the stuff on the internet, but there are some things you do not ever want to be put on the internet. And, you want those to be standalone based systems. Now, the rule of thumb is it's latency issues. Latency is very big. Not only in the IT world but in the OT world, it's even worse because a lot of these systems, are SCADA based systems. A lot of these are PLC systems. So if they lose their instructions, and their connection, they immediately go into a safe mode. So they stop. You know, the example I've always used, it's like an arm that's on a belt, like in a manufacturing. So there's the manufacturing line that's running, and that arm pushes that box off, to go to UPS a million times, right? Or FedEx a million times. If it loses those instructions, that arm just stops. So those envelopes and letters will start piling up, So just imagine if that was, chlorine that I was releasing into the water, as a bad actor from Russia, because I'm able to see this OT system, on the internet, and I flood this entire system with, chlorine or bromine or, hydrogen peroxide, which then, or bleach, because we do use bleach in our water systems, and or fluoride, and I turn that into a chemical release that's into the water system now, and I poison a town.
So you're an expert at knowing how the bad guys operate. But how do you counteract that? I believe you have a team of your own and you guys
Yep.
are wreaking havoc all over the place. How does that work?
Well, it's like this, as I've explained it more than once, is that, if I can do it from here at my home, the evildoers can do it from somewhere else, right? So my job is really to do a lot of threat hunting, a lot of cybersecurity, like pen testing in a way, but we are a red team, blue team, and purple team all wrapped up in one. So we're the all the different flavors or the Skittles version of whatever they come up with next labeled, and that is what my team does. We look for, and we say, okay, we are going to audit the system. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to look at the vulnerabilities. We're going to see where the good things are, the bad things are. We tabletop a lot of that. Then we look at what the vendor has, done or not done in a lot of scenarios, where their, physical standing is, in the physical world, like how old is your infrastructure? Is it 20, 30 years old? Because I mean, we deal with a lot of those systems, and then what do they touch? And then who and whom is in control of those systems? And then that boils down into us testing, to see how bad actually is and how bad we can be. So we are kind of relatively evil in a way, yes, to see what the bad guys can do, and then how do we stop that? And then that builds into the report that we, and that me and my company give to them, and we say, there it is, and do as thy wilt, which is the whole of the law. So you're either going to do it or not going to do it, as we say. Our check still clears on the 1st and 15th. We're good.
And I totally forgot to mention that your headgear is freaking awesome. Chip
Thank
is
you.
currently operational, but like,
Mm-hmm.
what's up with that headgear?
Well, I am under multiple SLAs, NDAs, in the FISA court orders. So I go to very great lengths to protect my identity. From an OPSEC, from an OPSEC standpoint, as well as protecting not only my identity of the people I work with, but my family, because I was doxxed by the Chinese, and the Chinese came for me. They came for my wife. They came for my dog, my cat, my mom, my dad, my grandmother. I mean, they came for everybody, and they tried to have me. And the Justice Department just laughed their ass off when they saw this. Was they tried to have a red notice put on me from Interpol to have me arrested and deported to face charges in China. And my lawyer was like, not no, but hell no, you're not going to be deported to a communist country to face charges. And this all started off because of OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, got hacked, and all of our identities, social security numbers, and home addresses leaked all over the internet. And I had to
Got to
um,
move.
move. I mean, the CIA and the FBI said, okay, congratulations. I know you just bought your house 2 years ago, but you got to move now within 4 days. And literally, there was a moving trucking company that showed up within 4 days and said, "Okay, you're moving wherever you want to go, but you can't be here." And it was like, okay, So I moved, from the Midwest to the South, to where my parents are and my family are, and I started my consulting company, here actually out of this room. And I was like, well, I can see a terrorist from a mile off down here. So that
Yeah, I'm
kind of was
also
that was a
in
very
the
good thing, that kind of happened. Now my wife was pissed, but I was like, the federal government said, move, honey. This is part of the job. I mean, when you married me, this is what you got into. So this is part of the
some
train ride.
So I'm curious of so the audience for this show, a lot of them are managed service providers or IT teams and corporations. So what you do is like on a nation state level, dealing with governments, protecting ours, which I'm glad to have you there. But I'm curious, what do you think the practical tips are that kind of trickle down to the private sector on like a smaller scale?
So we work with NIST, CISA. We work with all the regulatory bodies that are out there that try to tell you like this is the way things should be, but we know they're not. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. We know this from an IT and OT standpoint. They're not. A lot of it boils down to, as I tell businesses, it's like have you thought about you're talking all about your cloud and your IT and your firewalls and all this kind of stuff. What happens if I just turn the building off? You know, and it's relatively simple to do because Schneider Electrical, has a base password for all of your power strips or APC power
And no
strips,
one
and
ever
you
changes the
no one ever
default.
changes that. And as long as I can find out what that if I can get access to your internal network and do a dump of your IPs of your data center, and then I find out exactly, oh look, here's all your power strips and here's your APCs and your Schneider Electrical systems. I can just go into the webmin, type in that, password, and then congratulations, I can just turn all your power strips and your, UPS is completely off and you're basically screwed. So I hope you have a lot of extension cables and extension cords that you can run everywhere because guess what? You're going to have no power to any of your, applicational servers or whatever that you've got out there. So look at your IT. As I tell people, when you're looking at your IT, you need to look at your OT. You need to look at oh, what is our DR plan? Like what a physical DR plan. And how I learned that was through Katrina. I was sent down to take a look at a hospital, and they swore up and down they had a DR plan, and it was rock solid, and there was nothing that could destroy their network and their server and their services, including their buildings. And I said, okay, all right. And I went down there and I did what I do best, and my little evildoers were able to do what we do best. And I said, you've written some pretty good stuff. I mean, you got some good stuff here, but here's some variables you need to look at. And we told them about a hurricane. Like, what happens if you had a level 4 or 5 hurricane come through here, and there was one called Katrina, and it came through, and it just whacked them, and everything that we told them to do, they didn't do. And we were kind of brought back in after the fact, and they were like kind of going, okay, we kind of learned our lesson. Can you tell us more about what we should have done to make things better? And that's what we had to kind of do from a business perspective, is to take a look and see, okay, who are the shareholders? Okay, the patients. So if the EMR system goes down and you lose oxygen, to the wall, you're immediately going to have people that are in the ICS that are going to start dying, as well as the NICU. So babies are not getting oxygen. You've got people in the ICU unit that's not getting oxygen as well, for life carrying devices and so forth. And then, for example, we overflood the toilets, so we back up the water and the water pressure to where the toilets are overflowing. And we immediately, oh, you're in the middle of July, so we're just, or let's say August, and,
Turn off
it's
the
really
AC.
hot down there in New Orleans, as they say. We're going to turn your HVA system, from cool to heat and turn it up to like 120 degrees. So not only do you have, babies that are dying, people in the ICU that are dying, you've got regular patients now that have to be evacuated manually. You're either going to take them out by helicopter or you're going to have to run them through on paper, out the actual ER and then have them taken to another hospital while the toilets are overflowing, and you're losing oxygen. You've got no power. The heat is on. And congratulations, you have to literally take them down the stairs because I'm going to turn all the elevators off. So,
So how in reality, like that is a, maybe not the worst case scenario, but pretty close. How would you actually protect against that?
so this really boils down to how your, information, your network, your segmentation, and the vendors that you use, are built into a security plan. So, my job is to really come in and run those worst case scenarios of what it is I can and can not do based on what you have right now. Like, what is your real time, real world environment now? And then what can we do to protect, secure, and update and control and maintain that? That's the secret in the sauce, as they say. And the one key thing that we're ramming our heads against, especially in my line of work, is we hit that vendor wall. That SLA, that NDA, that vendors use to say, well, you can't touch our systems and whatnot, and blah 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 blah, because we want to have it controlled and so forth. Well, we kind of try to take a lot of that away from them and give that back to the shareholder, to where they've got control over that system and not necessarily the vendor, because the vendor doesn't really care. They get their money on the 1st, the 15th, and the 30th, no matter what, right? So if the system goes down, yeah, they can patch, control, and maintain it, but they're not guaranteeing you uptime. They're not guaranteeing you DR. They're not guaranteeing you all those things. So, as I tell you, you really got to get your infrastructure people, your maintenance control people, and legal involved to sit down and say, okay, Schneider Electrical, Siemens, ABB, all these other people, like, you got to list out literally what it is that you're trying to protect. And those are your physical assets that are in your entire infrastructure, from your server farms, your data center, your cloud operations, down to your building, water, light, toilets, sewer, septic. I mean, the list goes on and on. So you kind of see how that builds into. That's also fire suppression. That's also your
Yeah.
elevator systems. That's also, all those things, that are in that building management system, and I do a lot of walkthroughs. You know where I find them? In a closet under the stairs. You know, you know, a lit-
just for reference, I come from the world of electricians, and I
oh
have
yeah,
worked on a few BMS systems, fire suppression systems, and like fast food chains,
oh
and
yeah,
those things are exposed and just vulnerable to any sort of physical and technical attack, via TCP/IP or whatever. Like they are very exposed.
oh yeah. It's like, if I call it the screwdriver test. If I take this screwdriver right here and I pop that wire, what goes off? Oh no, we don't know. We don't. I mean, you're supposed to know, right? You know, and yeah, these systems are horribly abused. To where they should be treated like, if it was your, you know, payment enrollment system, for to pay all your employees. It should be
Yeah,
treated
that's a
exactly the
really good
same.
point. Like they're overlooked,
Yeah,
and the glory goes all to the technology, to the the apps running that you purchase for a lot of money, probably from a vendor, and then you've got this computer that runs the entire building sitting on the wall.
yeah. Buried in a filing cabinet somewhere, that it's under a desk, that you never would think of. So I got pictures. I got pictures of ones where they're literally in bathrooms. Like, they're in, old bathrooms. I mean, like, there's this full half rack server sitting, completely exposed in a bathroom.
They did like a remodel and they couldn't move it.
Yeah, they couldn't move anything. Yeah, but it's like, it's comical to me because, I mean, because I've been doing this for so many years. We don't think about water, that comes out of the faucet until it stops. We don't think about the electricity, until we flip the switch and it just doesn't come. The bulbs do not come on.
Yeah, no one
Y-
thinks about DNS until it doesn't work either.
Yeah. So I turned your DNS off. Ooh, that's where the real fun begins. And it's, you can run through those scenarios a million times. And at the state and the government level, I mean, it literally sits in a binder, a 3-ring binder that's normally white on a shelf somewhere. Nobody cares, right?
Hmm.
So it's fire and forget. And that's one of the things is I tell these shareholders, it's like, This is, it would be no different than your house. If your house burned down to the ground, what do you lose? And it's like, if you want to talk about DR, with a company, set the building on fire right next to it. That's how you really get them to start talking about disaster recovery. And then how, excuse me, how those systems can be affected. So it
So
is, it is, what do you see that's preventable? And then what do you see that's going to be in response to that to be able to fix those things? So that, that's what, I kind of bring to light, to a lot of these issues. And the good part is I got to hire my friends. I got to hire my friends that, I've known for years at DEF CON and Black Hat and all the conventions I go to. And it's a great, and then the thing though too is it's a really, because I've known these guys for 20 something plus years, and most of them are got questionable pasts for some of the things they've done. I'm not going to lie to myself, and their political beliefs are not necessarily mine or anybody else's, which is to each their own. But, I don't judge a book by its cover. They're really good at what they do. I've got a DNS guy that's really good at DNS. I got another guy that's really great at networking. I got a really good guy that's, a 99.999% social engineering score. He's that good. So, excuse me. I have a really good team. I have a really good team of people that I work with, to kind of explain these things to Joe Beer can, like we would if we were testifying in a child pornography case. Because, I work in a lot of different arenas. Not only do I work, in IT, in criminal investigations, as well as, everything from, you name it, drug smuggling down to logistics operations, to working, against, state and federal, criminals, real angels, let me tell you, that I deal with on a daily basis. But we're also dealing with a lot of government infrastructure, state infrastructure, national infrastructure that's been neglected for 30 years. The last infrastructure bill that we had was in 1996 when I graduated high school. So it's like, now we've got a new, past administration, this current administration, and I always say that because I'm be political. I blame all of them for the past 30 years of, we really have got to concentrate on, fixing roads and dams and electrical, in those things, and do they need to be upgraded and updated? Absolutely. Do they need to put it on the internet?
don't do it. So I have another question for you about like the kind of new crop of buzzwords AI, which
Oh,
I'm
God.
sure you hate, and I'm sure you have a
Oh,
opinion
set
about.
me on
But I wanted to
fire.
I wanted to preface this with something with a question. Have you ever worked on railroad crossing project in Missouri?
I know what you're talking about, and the answer is yeah, kind of. I can say some things about it, but not much. But,
Okay.
we did have our own version of Chernobyl, you know, and
Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. Because this okay, so I used AI because, like you said, you have a past which is clouded in mystery. You're wearing a mask. So one of the sources that AI got back from a cursory search on your name was this document for the Missouri. What is it from? The Missouri budget fiscal year 2024. And I don't even know if this is what you're talking about. But so I pulled up this document. I'm like, what is this? So I searched your name, Luther, Martin Luther King. Okay. All right. And you're the name you go by, Chip. Where's that? Oh, the CHIPS Act, blah, blah, blah. And then your last name, Harris. It's like, oh, the Harris Stowe State University. It's like your name was in this document and AI thought it was associated with you,
oh
but I have
yeah,
a feeling it's not.
there's a couple things that we've been working on the state of Missouri with. So I didn't know if you were pulling from some of the documentation that we have, because we work a lot with BSNF, and BSNF, they're great guys, and we work a lot with trains, planes, and automobiles, because that's the company I work for. The company it's called Allied, and I love you guys, HR. I love you so much. This has nothing. This is my own personal beliefs. Has nothing to do with the company. But we work a lot with trains, planes, automobiles, through different states. We've been working on a lot of different projects. But AI has its tool. It has its place. But I get asked so many questions about AI. It's like, geez, just set me on fire in my front yard and put me out with fire ants from a 5 gallon bucket. Because AI does what you tell it to do. AI is not Terminator. It's been around forever. It doesn't have sentience. It doesn't have a physical being. And all these conspiracy theories and all this crap around it and everything. It's no different than a really big, like you just showed, search engine. Okay, it does what it tells it to do. You can go out there and try to Google my image and Google it, but yeah, guess what? You're pulling up stuff from 25, 30 years ago. I don't even look the same anymore. I wish I did, but I don't. I mean,
Right, don't we all?
I have not aged well like wine, more like vinegar. I'm just getting
But I
more.
think that's the point. Uh, that AI is, like you say, a tool, and you have to use it with skepticism, just like any other tool.
I take everything with a just huge grain of salt because in this industry, it's very fluid. What were we talking about 5 years ago? Cloud. Then what we were talking about before that, right? I mean, it's a circular argument. It's like the snake eating its tail. It just goes around in a circle, right? Same thing in cybersecurity. Those buzzwords don't change that much, but it's like, we talked about data lakes and then data pipes, right? Then we talked about SIM, and then we talked about cloud, and now we're talking about AI. And then before that, we were talking about data centers, and then we rolled it back 10. I mean, you just look back in our history. Hell, we can't even fix password issues for Christ's sakes, as I tell people. We have a horrible, long term memory of some of the things that we have not done, you know? And I tell that same thing about AI. AI is not the end all be all fix for all things. Especially if you have a fly by wire standalone system, you're not going to put AI on it. AI is good for a lot of things, self healing networks, right? Topology issues, high levels of dealing with network communications in, VLANs and segmentations. Because, in OT world, we start at zero level. We start at the device level. I mean, we literally at the component level. And we go up to level 3, up to level 4 sometimes. And then after that, we don't care. We don't care about the rest of that on the ISO model. But we really do care about, is level 2 to level 3 because, we really look at network translation because most of these systems are not set up on TCP. They're set up on TMP and UDP, So, we're looking at session time. We're looking at latency issues. That's why most of these things are fiber driven. They're not, some of them are Cat 5, Cat 6 connectors. But, the other thing though too is some of these systems are completely old. Some of them do need to be driven, by fiber. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for that. But, we have, if we do see something that does go down and we need to be able to do a hot swap transfer and everything before the human can do it, the computer can do it. I'm all for that. That's awesome. AI, that a job, boy. Attaboy, as we say in the South. That's what you get. That little star right there next to the AI fixed it before I could, right? Or caught it before I could. That's even better. Because guess what? That gives me the ability of saying, hey, I'm paying gobs of money to this OT vendor to fix these things, and it magically got healed without me having to lift a finger to be able to do it. Now, would I like a report on that? Yeah. Would I like to see a warning and a flag that some of those things actually did happen? Absolutely. And you've got your Clarities and your Nozomis and your Waterfalls. You've got lots of companies out there, even Dracos. Rob and I have a kind of love hate relationship, but, you got your Dracoses that are out there to help provide those kind of, helps in your systems, and to audit those systems and make those things work. And that's where AI really is going in this, at least in my opinion, in this industry as a helper. You know, not an overall solution, but something that can help me do something, right? And can help me get me my data and information more safely and security, and secure. Encryption right now is out the window. AI is breaking encryption, breaking ciphering, because we do have quantum computing now. And when you're dealing with AI, you have serious, security issues dealing with SHA-1, SHA-2, issues that we actually see on old servers and systems. And as you can also see, AI is being used to attack SQL and .NET and .VBS like on a whole nother level that we've never seen before. Because what those IT and OT systems, guess what they build into a database, right? And of course, Microsoft is going to be running that database normally 9 times out of 10, or OpenSQL, or some form of SQL. MySQL, doesn't matter what it is. And these programming languages that we use are old. I mean, we're talking 30, 40 years old. I mean, they use G code. And their instructions are not in Python. They're not, some of them are even in Fortran and Cobalt, if you can believe this language. And these systems are old and antiquated. And do we need to control, do an EOL process to where say, yeah, we need to get that end of life system completely ripped out and put something new in? Absolutely. But you know what that is? That's what we call a green paper problem. And you know who controls that green paper? Taxpayers.
Yeah,
and
Uncle
it's
Sam.
that's where the politics kick in, and I step out.
Right. Well, so you mentioned something pretty interesting in there about passwords, and I've heard you say this before, that you're not a big fan of passwords, but I am curious. What do you think of the new pass keys that are like an encryption key for websites? Do you think that's sufficient?
Possibly. What happens if I lose it? Or I compromise that? How fast and how quick can you reset that? That's always the thing that I tell people about. Whether it's YubiKeys, any of the things that are out there. There's tons of manufacturers that sell them out there, whatnot. But when you're dealing, with encryption and ciphering technology, especially when you're dealing with high-level Werner encryption, we still have a lot of systems that are 24-bit, 64-bit, encrypted. They need to be 128, 512, if not 1080, for some of those higher level systems. And those credentials are very sensitive, and there's only a certain amount of people that should have those credentials. And if you put those onto something, something that you have and something that you are, and you lose one of those, that's a very bad day for everyone. For the reason being is it's something I know, which is the password, something I have, which is that actual key, and then something that I'm going to put it on, which would be the actual system itself. If I lose one of those three things, it's that whole chain's broken. It's no different than blockchain. It's no different than anything else. It can completely be intercepted and vulnerable to susceptibility to attack. Now, some people say that's a low level, but still it's a level. Low hanging fruit is low hanging
Yeah,
fruit. And you
exactly.
know what? I love some low hanging fruit, because guess what? That actual fruit's connected to a branch that's connected to a tree that's connected to the trunk of the network. It just takes time. And people nowadays are not patient. I am. I will wait 6 months for you to log in for me to steal your credentials. Most people will not. I will.
We've seen a lot of breaches or hacks, whatever you would want to call it, about people stealing tokens for website
Oh, yeah,
logins.
tokenization. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, just taking the token, and now you are that person in the browser, so it
that's
thinks
right.
you're them. Identity theft, basically.
You hit all that accept cookies, just wait for it. It's just a matter of time. And we've seen a lot of browsers that are having issues right now. I mean, Google's having, updates, every 2 weeks now, just like Patch Tuesday. Firefox, same thing. Doesn't matter if you're using the Onion browser or Tor, I mean, you're still having to do some massive updates, because, a lot of those systems, even though they say they're encrypted, they're not really encrypted if you're accepting all the responsibility and the cookies, and the tokenization for that. So, that goes back to should we put this on the web or not? Well, I'm on the not category.
I introduced myself to the managed service provider space on a Reddit post with a
Mm-hmm.
video where I gave them the guaranteed way to not get hacked. And it was a video of me throwing my phone in the inlet across the street from my house in a
Oh,
body
yeah.
of water.
Yeah.
And obviously got a lot of hate because you don't say guaranteed cybersecurity tool on Reddit. But anyway,
Oh, yeah, the
uh,
haters will
the
come
on,
out.
oh yeah, it was brutal. I got banned for like 28 days. It was
Oh,
fun.
yeah, it's just like, this is your wallet, whether people want to admit it or not. If I own this, I own you. You know,
Exactly.
it's that device. I mean, and if you've got your company's passwords in plain text on this, or this connects to, some kind of authentication based software, for your company, you're just asking for it. It's just a matter of time. And I've done this, at many sessions before, where IoT devices, and tablets, we don't even let in some of our facilities. For the reason being is we don't want those tablet and devices even connecting to the guest network because we're afraid that there might be malware or anything like that. One of the first things that I did with the company I'm working with now was we banned this from being charged on any computer. You can't plug it into, any computer to get a charge off of it. You get your charging cable, get your power strip, plug it in that way. We're not going to let you take that device and tether it to where it might have rooted based malware on it, to infect our machines for the company.
Yeah, you can
So,
consider every networking device as hostile.
oh yeah, do we allow? Nope. So that was one of the, and the thing though too is I tell people like, when was the last time you looked at your firewall rules? When was the last time you reviewed that? When was the last time you scanned for open file shares, on your SharePoint, And then they're like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Well, you asked. My job is, to be the adult in the room and sometimes to deliver pure nightmare fuel to these people. But
Nightmare
it,
fuel.
and it is. I mean, it's not some scare tactic either. It's not that I'm a very scary person. And I am, and I can be. You can ask my 12-year-old that. She's very scared of daddy sometimes when daddy gets in a bad mood. But it's the same thing. It's like, someone's got to be the adults in the room and deliver the bad news. I mean, most of the CEO and C level, they want the 30 minutes of good and the 10 minutes of bad. That's not my job. My job is to tell you what the evildoers are going to do to you, and this is how bad can be. Now, you not might want to not hear the truth. You might want to stick your head in the sand and deal with that. But the nightmare fuel that I deliver normally has a price tag that's associated with it. So, is there a way to fix the problem? Yeah. It just takes time, effort, energy, manpower, and money. You're not doing this for free. I'm not doing this for free. Billable hours, baby. I mean, trust me.
So
I'm
when
worse
you're
than
not
a I'm worse than a lawyer.
so when you're not delivering nightmare fuel for cash, I understand that you do a lot of, I guess, what you could call evangelism in the space, but you don't deliver the good news; you deliver the bad news.
That's right, because guess what? The devil's in the details. The devil is real, and he does believe in you. And guess what? I have to do the devil's deeds sometimes. That is my job. I mean, that's what I've been trained to do. That's what I like to do. And sometimes people don't want me to do those things, but it's like, look, these people that are doing this against you do not care about safety, well-being, and of not only you but of others. Their intention is to, first off, monetary. I mean, 99.9% of what I deal
Right.
with deals with greed. It's just simple, common, economical greed. They want to steal money. The really bad ones that I have to deal with don't even care about that. They just want to murder and maim and cause havoc and watch the world burn. Those are the ones you really have to watch out for, because guess what? That means that their monetary means that means nothing to them. That means everything that they want to do to the real world, that affects everybody, is built on one single thing: revenge. you know, it is built on, the evil things that we don't want to talk about, murder and death and destruction, and having bodies piled up by the dozen. It's pretty bad. I mean, and those things can happen. I mean, to give you an example of Kansas, one of the worst, train disasters we ever had, spilt chemicals all over the ground, in Palestine, and it was horrible. Was it preventable? Absolutely. Did we do anything about it? No. Now you've got, chemical exposure in the ground that's going to be there for 25 to 30 years, no matter how far they dig down. People's property values dropped overnight. You know, and they're looking at, chemical exposure, to that ground and into the environment, and not only to themselves for 20, 25, 30 years, just no different than Chernobyl did. And then our solution was, let's drop napalm on it and make it burn even faster. So
Like I'm no scientist, but that doesn't sound correct.
I am gonna say that was a bad idea. That's not saying from a scientific standpoint of view, but just burning it off with napalm, just to get it in the, even if it was in the ground, it'd make it burn quicker. Not necessarily the best job there, government, and the people that made those decisions to do all that. But, it's done, and it goes out of our news cycle within 24 hours, So, it's a lot of these things until they really physically affect us, and one of the things that just set me off like a rocket this year was, and we're not even that far into the years where you had huge swaths of Los Angeles and Orange County on fire, and you had firefighters going to a fire hydrant trying to turn it on and no water come out. That is a failure of infrastructure. Not a failure of thinking. That is just because there should be water pressure coming out between 200 to 300 psi, depending on what pipe size it is, out of that hydrant to be able to put out a fire, in Los Angeles. And we watched, all these people lose their homes. And now we're dealing with what? Mudslides? Oh, yeah. And all the toxicity that comes out of a home that burns down to the ground, the magnesium, the chloride, the cobalt,
All the
everything like
building
that.
materials
Yep.
gasified.
And guess what it's going to do? It's going to wash right into the ocean. And guess where they get most of their filtered water from? The ocean. So yeah, from their desalination plants in Los Angeles and the greater area. So yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a preventable thing that could have been done that was not done that had nothing to do with cybersecurity. It had everything to do with just basic practical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So if we would have put that on the internet, would that made of anything any better? Probably not. you know. There. I will always and always believe this, and I will preach and I will give the evangelism to this. Is that in OT cybersecurity, the first thing that you think of is safety. My safety, the personal safety, the stakeholder safety, and the public safety. That is what spawns out of that. And we use what's called the bow tie model. And the bow tie model has an event, and when that event is triggered, it bow ties out and sprawls out into how that fix actually gets done. So as I tell people that are in our industry, take a look at those things. Our key thing in OT land versus IT land. IT land cares about data, right? Data, monetary stuff. I get it. Banking statements, personal data, passwords, so forth. OT, we care about, security that's based in safety. The safety of the person, the safety of, the power plant. We don't want it to blow up. That would be bad. Especially if it's a nuclear facility. That would be really bad, for everybody. That's why we have safety controls that are set up. The safety of the general public, and the safety of the person, the safety of you. We want to make sure that you don't have to think about this when you flip on the switch, turn on the water, or flush the toilet, right? We want you to kindly go on with your life, not having to worry about the evil little things that these bad guys are trying to do behind the scenes. So, we kind of live in the shadows, live in the curtains, of the evil things that they actually do and they're actually are driven. And when you're talking about DNS, yeah, that is one of our major, endpoints right there because DNS security is always top of our list because, we deal with a lot of those things that have to integrate with those IT and OT systems that affect not only, SQL databases, the DNS, and some of the infrastructure that you see mostly on IT. Some of that sprawls into OT as well, and we really want to make sure that those things are safe and secure and not put in, a broom closet somewhere on the fifth floor that nobody knows about that's buried under last year's tax records and a whole bunch of legal boxes.
Well, if you need to get some more DNS security, I know somebody. Just letting you know. Cool. But hey, Chip, I think you are the best giver of bad information. Like I could just picture like a boardroom and people in suits or whatever. You just come in and wreck their day, and I just
Yeah,
wish it was on video.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, people's lower colons just basically expel in the room, where there's, many a gold brick being laid, and, and, many people having a cow. And, especially when it's politicians, I try not to scare them as much, but, it is what it is. Because I tell people I don't really sugarcoat a lot of the stuff that I have to tell you because it's the truth. And that's the one thing that all cybersecurity is based around is the truth, every bit of it. If I'm not telling you the truth, I'm telling you a lie. I'm not necessarily the most eloquent people or person that you would want to put in front of a Congress and congressional hearing, but it's happened a couple times before, and they kind of get scared because I mean it's like, look, if my five guys can do it, think about what a team of 30 people in China that are in a building, and that's what they do on 3 shifts a day. I mean, that's their whole job. Like a job, like a normal 9 to 5 job, is to hack our infrastructure, find the problems that are with Allen Bradley, find the problems that are with Rockwell Automation, find the problems with, and then how they can exploit those things to affect a dam or to affect a power system or to affect a power grid. I mean, these are the people that are out to do us harm. Russia, China, Iran, we call them the dirty 30. There's 30 different countries that are running 24/7, 365 that have, weaponized cyber divisions that, are trying to affect our infrastructure 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you don't believe me, I can show you some of the firewall rules that I have to deal with that I present to people. It just scares the living poop out of them. And it should. And it does, because I mean, they're not looking at, our best interest. They're looking at their best interest, and then what they can be able to do to us. But it's also tit for tat warfare. If they can do it to us, we can do it to them. And we have yet had that happen in our industry. Is it coming? Possibly. Stuxnet was the first shot over the bow that kind of did that, that showed a cyber weapon can be deployed to affect the physical world. And there's been many books and people have talked about Stuxnet for years now. But that was just a shot over the bow. I mean, we have not launched a full scale cyber, initiative war based on infrastructure yet. People that have, Russia, the Russians are really good at it. They've been doing it to the Ukrainians for years. That goes back to Sandworm and a lot of the people that can affect, the physical world through older, XP up to Windows 7 based systems. The Russians are really good at it, and they really like doing it, and they really like doing it to, nation states and use them as a test bed. And, they've used Ukraine as a test bed for a lot of their, cyber war, weapons to be tested onto a nation or a nation from a nation state. So, the history of that just goes beyond what you and I could talk about within an hour. I mean, that's a whole lecture basically. But I mean, I give a lot of people examples, of how bad can be, and then how bad it can happen to you. It's just depending on your level of commitment, because I mean, this is a financial commitment, normally in the millions of dollars, to get some of these things fixed. In the short term, I can put a band-aid on the bullet wound, but still a bullet wound. You're going to bleed out sooner or later. So my running rule is, and a lot of people have heard me say this before, you pay me now, you pay me later, still got to pay me. Simple as that.
Well, Chip, I am so glad that you and your team are getting paid by our team. So
Yeah.
keep doing the good work that you are, and I appreciate it. And I thank you for coming on the podcast and telling us some really thrilling stories.
No, no problem. Anytime, sir.